On the night we went on our mission, there was something strange in the air, like licking a metal surface. I am Sergeant Daniel Fuller, a U.S. Army advisor working with the Honduras Forest Warfare Training Center. That patrol mission should have been normal. Lieutenant Rafael Ortega led us with the help of Corporal Ethan Anderson, 3 Honduran soldiers, 2 mules to carry our supplies, and Rico, a German shepherd dog, for early warning. 8 humans and 3 animals were heading towards something that would destroy most of us. Before I tell you what happened in that forest, you need to understand one thing. Have you ever felt like something impossible was watching you? Leave a comment and share your story, because after this night, you will clearly understand why some memories never go away. The patrol briefing we got was normal: location points, radio check times, rules for possible fighting. We were checking a supply route to make sure the road from Makaran Base to the IUD Forward Operating Post was clear, a 40-kilometer road into the deep virgin forest. The rainy season had ended 2 weeks before, leaving the ground easy to walk on but soft. Conditions were perfect. There was nothing to worry about. That's what Captain Harris told us at 5 p.m. By 11 p.m., I learned that perfect conditions mean nothing when you're dealing with something that lives outside the normal rules. We left the base at 6:30 p.m., just as the sun dropped below the western ridge line. The jungle swallowed us within 50 meters. That's how it is in Central America. The tree line isn't slow. It's a wall. One step you're in sunlight. The next you're under a covering so thick the sky disappears. Ortega took the lead. He had been running patrols in this valley for 6 years. He knew every bend in the river, every animal trail. His boots moved with the confidence of a man who had walked this ground 1,000 times. Behind him, Anderson carried the radio, a PRC-77 that weighed 25 pounds with the extra battery. Behind Anderson, the 3 Honduran soldiers, Ramirez, Gutierrez, and Soto, young men barely out of training, but solid. Behind them, the mules loaded with tents, food, ammunition, and behind the mules, me with Rico on a leash. The dog was nervous from the start. His ears kept moving, catching sounds I couldn't hear. His hair stood up twice in the first hour, but when I stopped to listen, there was nothing, just the normal sounds of jungle night: howler monkeys, tree frogs, the distant scream of a jaguar marking its territory. Fuller, Ortega called back quietly. "The dog okay?" "Just jumpy," I said. "Probably smells a snake." Ortega nodded and kept going, but I saw how his hand stayed close to his rifle, how his eyes searched the tree line more often than usual. He felt it too, that wrongness in the air. We reached the Rio Coco at 8:30 p.m. The river ran black under the quarter moon, maybe 80 meters wide at this point, moving with that deep, steady flow that spoke of serious depth. The trail followed the north bank, staying close to the water where the plants thinned enough to move without machetes. This was the dangerous stretch. For 3 kilometers, the trail ran exposed along a mud flat where floods had killed the trees. Open ground, no cover. If someone wanted to attack a patrol, this was the place. Ortega raised his fist. We stopped. He pointed to Ramirez and Gutierrez, sent them ahead to scout. They moved out, rifles up, spacing themselves 10 meters apart. We watched them disappear into the darkness ahead, marked only by the faint glow of their infrared chemical lights. That's when the first animal sound came. Not from the jungle, from the river. A deep breathing out, long and slow, like a whale coming up for air. But wrong. Too much deep sound, too much force behind it. The sound rolled across the water and hit us like a physical thing. Rico went stiff, his lips pulled back, showing teeth. A low growl built in his chest, so deep I felt it through the leash. "What the hell was that?" Anderson whispered. Ortega shook his head. His jaw was tight. "Manatee, maybe. They come upriver sometimes." "Manatees don't sound like that," I said. "I know," Ortega admitted quietly, "but I don't have a better answer." The radio crackled. Ramirez checking in. Trail clear to the first bend. No movement, no tracks. "Copy," Anderson replied. "Hold position." We moved forward, closing the distance to the scouts. The mules followed reluctantly, their hooves sucking in the mud with each step. Rico pulled against the leash, wanting to turn back. I had to drag him. The smell hit us at the bend. Rich, organic, like a reptile house at a zoo, but stronger. That clean, cold smell of something ancient. It hung in the air thick enough to taste. Gutierrez was standing at the water's edge, flashlight pointed down. Senor, he called. Meyer Esto, look at this. We gathered around. In the mud at the waterline, prints. Lots of them, but nothing I recognized. Too big for a caiman. Wrong shape for a jaguar. They looked almost like handprints. If hands had claws and were the size of dinner plates. Ortega knelt, touching the edge of one print. The mud was still soft, fresh, made within the last hour. Could be a tapir, Soto offered. He was the youngest, trying to sound confident. Tapirs have hooves, Gutierrez said flatly. These have fingers. Anderson pressed the radio button, called back to base. Mockerin, this is Jaguar 6. We have possible large animal activity at checkpoint 2. Requesting guidance. Over. Static. Long seconds of it. Then a voice, scratchy with distance. Jaguar 6, continue mission. Maintain radio discipline. Out. Not helpful, but he expected. Command didn't like questions that required answers they didn't have. Ortega stood, wiped his hand on his pants. We keep moving. Stay tight. Eyes on the water. We reformed the patrol and pushed forward. The trail here ran barely 3 meters from the river's edge. To our left, black water moving in silence. To our right, jungle so thick you couldn't see 5 meters in. If something wanted us, we had nowhere to go. The breathing sound came again, closer this time, maybe 50 meters upriver. That same long breathing out followed by a deep breathing in. The rhythm was steady, deliberate, like something sleeping or waiting. Rico stopped dead, refused to move. I pulled the leash. He pulled back, claws digging into mud. His growl turned into a whine, high and panicked. Fuller, Ortega said, warning in his tone. I'm trying, I said. He won't. The water exploded, not slowly, not with warning, just erupted in a sheet of white foam and sprayed 20 meters ahead of us. Something massive broke the surface, rose up, pushed water aside in a wave that crashed onto the bank. For 3 seconds, I saw it clearly in the moonlight. A shape, huge. The head alone was bigger than an oil drum. Long snout, eyes set forward, catching light like mirrors. The body behind it, thick and muscled, covered in scales that reflected wet and dark. It didn't roar, didn't hiss, just rose up, water shedding off it like oil, and looked at us. Then it slammed back down. The impact sent another wave across the mud, and it was gone. For a moment, nobody moved. We stood frozen, rifles half raised, brains trying to process what our eyes had just reported. Did you see? Anderson started. Yes, Ortega cut him off. His voice was tight, controlled, the voice of a man forcing himself not to panic. We all saw it. One of the mules broke, just snapped its lead and ran back the way we'd come. The supplies on its back, 50 pounds of gear, clanging and crashing as it ran. The second mule tried to follow, but Ramirez grabbed its bridle and held on. Rico was done. He lunged away from me, jerking the leash out of my hand. I grabbed for him but missed. The dog shot into the jungle and disappeared. Let him go, Ortega said. We need to move. Now. Move where? Gutierrez said. His voice cracked. Did you see the size of that thing? I saw it. Ortega snapped. Which is why we are not staying here. He pointed ahead along the trail. Forward operating post is 8 kilometers. We can make that in 2 hours if we push. There's concrete walls, real cover. What if it follows? Soto asked. Then we deal with it, Ortega said. But we don't deal with it here in the open. Anderson was already on the radio. Mockerin. This is Jaguar 6. We have contact with unknown large animal, extremely large, requesting immediate guidance. How copy? The static hissed. Underneath it, Something else, a pulsing rhythm, like the sound was breathing. Long intake, slow breathing out. Markerin, how copy? Anderson repeated. Nothing, just that pulse. Long intake, slow breathing out. Radio's messed up, Anderson said. Check it, Ortega ordered. Anderson pulled the handset away from his ear, examined the connection. It's fine. Signal strength is good, but someone's on the frequency. Who? I asked. I don't know, but they're not talking, just breathing. Another sound from the water, not the breathing this time. A splash, deliberate, like something testing the depth or the distance. Move, Ortega said. Now, we moved fast, not quite running, but close. The remaining mule struggled to keep pace, its load shifting with each step. Ramirez pulled it along, cursing in Spanish. The trail curved right, following the river bend. Here, the bank rose slightly, giving us a meter of elevation. Not much, but enough to see the water surface. I kept glancing left, searching for movement, for that shape rising again. The jungle around us had gone silent, completely silent. No frogs, no insects. Even the night birds had stopped. It was like the entire ecosystem knew something was wrong, like every living thing had the sense to hide. We covered a kilometer, then another. The trail straightened, running through a section where the floodplain widened, open mud on both sides, moonlight turning everything silver and black. That's when the mule started screaming, not braying, screaming, a sound I'd never heard a mule make, pure terror. It reared up, pulling Ramirez off his feet. The load on its back shifted, tipped, and half the supplies slid off into the mud. Hold it, Ortega shouted. Ramirez tried. He wrapped both hands around the bridle and pulled down with his full weight. But the mule was beyond control. It twisted, kicked, then ran straight toward the river. Stop it, Gutierrez yelled. But there was no stopping it. The mule hit the water at full speed and kept going, waited out until the current caught it. We watched, helpless, as it was swept downstream, its head above water, still screaming. The supplies floated beside it. Then something rose beneath it. Not a full emergence, just a shadow under the surface. The mule's scream cut off. It went under, 1 second thrashing in the current, the next gone, completely gone. No splash, no struggle, just vanished. The supplies followed, one by one, pulled under as if on wires. Tents, food, ammunition cans. The water barely rippled. We stood there, staring at the empty river, trying to understand what we'd just seen. Radio base, Ortega said quietly. Tell them we've lost both mules and most of our supplies. Anderson pressed the radio button. Mockerin, Jaguar 6. Be advised we have lost our pack animals and equipment. Repeat. Both mules down. Dragged into the river by unknown contact. Request immediate extraction. Over. The static came back, and under it, that breathing. Slower now. Satisfied. Mockerin, do you copy? Anderson's voice was tight. We need extraction. We need it now. The breathing changed, became a sound almost like a chuckle. Low, rumbling. Then the radio went dead. Not static, dead. Complete silence. Anderson shook it, checked the battery. It's gone. Radio's completely dead. How? I asked. You just checked it 5 minutes ago. I don't know, Anderson said. But we are offline. No communication with base. Ortega looked at each of us in turn, reading our faces, seeing the fear, the exhaustion, the beginning of panic. He was calculating, deciding. The FOB is 6 kilometers, he said. They have working radios there. Probably already heard us. They'll be expecting us. We double time it, and we're there in 90 minutes. What if that thing comes back? Soto asked. Then we fight, Ortega said simply. But we don't fight it here. We find cover. We find walls. We find a fighting position. He was right. Staying in the open was suicide. If that thing decided to come onto land, we were dead. Our only chance was the FOB. We started moving again, faster now, the adrenaline pushing us beyond normal tiredness. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but I kept going. We all did. Behind us, from the river, that breathing sound followed, never quite catching up, never quite falling behind, just there, constant, a reminder that we were being watched, tracked. The trail climbed slightly, rising into higher ground where the jungle closed in again. Here, the trees provided cover. I felt slightly safer under the covering, less exposed, but the breathing continued, echoing through the forest. After 30 minutes of hard movement, Anderson stopped, held up his hand. Listen, we stopped, tried to hear over our own ragged breathing. Water, the sound of something moving through water, not in the river, in the jungle, behind us, and to the left, parallel to our path. It's flanking us, Gutierrez whispered. Keep moving, Ortega said. Don't stop. Don't fight unless it attacks. We pushed forward. The sound of water movement kept pace, sometimes ahead of us, sometimes behind, never visible. Just that constant splash and rustle, like something massive was wading through the flooded areas between the trees. Another kilometer passed. The trail descended back toward the river. This section was unavoidable, the only route forward. Sheer rock face on the right, water on the left. No choice but to thread through. Ortega paused at the entrance to this bottleneck. His face was grim. Stay close. Watch the water. If it comes, we fire until we're dry. Understand? We nodded, checked our weapons. I had 4 magazines, 28 rounds each, 112 bullets between me and whatever was out there. It didn't feel like enough. We entered the narrows, single file now, shoulders almost brushing the rock face. The river ran less than 2 meters away, so close I could have reached out and touched it. The breathing stopped. Complete silence. Not even the water made sound, like the whole world was holding its breath. 10 meters into the narrows. 20, 30. The trail curved ahead, promising wider ground beyond. That's when the water moved, not violent, just a ripple, spreading outward in perfect circles from a point directly beside us. Something had surfaced, slow, quiet, right there. I looked down, met eyes, two of them, set in a head the size of a compact car. They glowed faint amber, reflected moonlight or something internal. I couldn't tell, but they looked at me with an intelligence that froze my blood. Not animal curiosity, recognition, like it knew exactly what I was. Time stretched. That stare lasted forever, and no time at all. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just stood there, rifle in my hands, useless, while something impossible studied me from less than 10 feet away. Then it sank, smooth, silent. The eyes disappeared beneath black water without a ripple, and it was gone. My legs gave out. I sagged against the rock face, gasping. Fuller. Anderson grabbed my arm. Move. Keep moving. I found my feet, stumbled forward. We cleared the narrows and broke into faster ground. Behind us, the water stayed quiet, but I felt those eyes, burned into my memory like a brand. We ran, properly ran now, discipline forgotten, training abandoned, just 6 terrified soldiers sprinting through the jungle, chasing the promise of walls and light and safety. The FOB came into view at 1:30 a.m., perimeter lights glowing like a beacon. We crashed through the wire, past the guards, into the compound, collapsed in the dirt, chests heaving, unable to speak. The duty officer came running. Lieutenant Marks, American advisor like me. He took one look at our faces and knew something had gone wrong, badly wrong. Where are your mules? He asked. Where's your dog? Where's your gear? Ortega looked up at him. Gone. The river took them. The river? Marks frowned. What do you mean the river took them? Exactly what I said, Ortega replied. Something in the water, something big, dragged them under. Marks looked at me. Fuller? I nodded. He's telling the truth. I saw it. We all saw it. Saw what exactly? I opened my mouth, closed it. Tried to find words that wouldn't sound insane. Failed. I don't know what it was, I said, but it was big, bigger than anything that should exist in this river. Mark studied us for a long moment, then nodded. Get inside. Get cleaned up. We'll debrief in 20 minutes. The debriefing room was small, concrete walls, single bulb hanging from the ceiling, a table with chairs, standard military interrogation setup. Lieutenant Marks sat across from us with a notebook and a tape recorder. Behind him, the FOB commander, Captain Rodriguez, Honduran Army, arms crossed, face unreadable. Start from the beginning, Mark said. Everything. Leave nothing out. Ortega did most of the talking. He was good at reports, kept it factual. Times, locations, observations. He described the breathing sounds, the tracks in the mud, the moment when the first mule bolted, the moment when the second one entered the water and was dragged under. And you saw what took it? Marx asked. A shadow, Ortega said. Under the water. Large. Moving deliberately. How large? Bigger than the mule. Significantly bigger. Marx wrote it down. And the equipment? The supplies pulled under after the mule? All of it, Ortega said. Like it was connected to a rope. Could it have been caught in the current? No, I said. The current was strong, but not that strong. And the way it went down all at once, coordinated, that wasn't natural. Marx looked at me. You're saying something pulled them down intentionally? Yes. Something big enough to pull a full-grown mule underwater without a struggle. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. Then tell me about the radio interference. Anderson leaned forward. It started about an hour into the patrol. Static on the frequency, but underneath, a pulsing sound, like breathing, long inhales, long exhales. When we tried to contact base after the first incident, the breathing got louder. Then the radio died completely. Battery? Fresh battery. Radio was fully functional before we left. I checked it twice. Marx made another note. Captain Rodriguez said something in Spanish. Ortega responded. They went back and forth for a minute. Rodriguez looked skeptical, but concerned. The captain wants to know if anyone was injured. Marx translated. No injuries, Ortega said. Well, we lost Rico, the dog. He broke free and ran. Any signs of drug runners? Contras? Local gangs? Nothing, Ortega said. This wasn't human. You're certain? I'm certain. Marx clicked off the tape recorder, leaned back. You understand how this sounds? I understand, Ortega said, but I also understand what I saw. What we all saw. Something is in that river. Something dangerous. Rodriguez spoke again. Marx translated. The captain says there have been stories, local rumors, fishermen who lost nets, villages that won't go near certain stretches of water. He didn't believe them before. And now? I asked. Marx translated the question. Rodriguez's response was short, grim. Now he's not sure, Marx said. We sat in silence. The bulb above us flickered. Outside, the generator hummed. Normal sounds, safe sounds, but they felt thin, like a curtain that could be pulled back at any moment. What happens now? Anderson asked. You stay here, Marx said. We'll send a recovery team back along the trail at first light. See if we can find any of the equipment. Document the tracks. Take photographs. Build a real report. You won't find anything, I said. It pulled everything underwater. And those tracks we saw, by morning they'll be gone. Rain, animals. The jungle covers things fast. Maybe, Marx admitted, but we have to try. We have to document this properly, or command will never believe it. He stood. Get some sleep. You're on stand down until the recovery team comes back. That's an order. We filed out. Captain Rodriguez stopped Ortega at the door. They spoke in low Spanish. I caught words. Cuidado. Peligroso. No vuelvas. Be careful. Dangerous. Don't go back. The barracks were basic. Plywood walls. Cots with mosquito nets. A single fan spinning overhead. Anderson and I took bunks near the door. The Honduran soldiers took the far end. We didn't talk, just stripped off our gear and lay down. But nobody slept. I stared at the ceiling, watching the fan blades turn, thinking about those eyes, that intelligence, the way it had looked at me, like I was an interesting specimen, something to study. At 6 a.m., the recovery team left, 6 fresh soldiers with a radio and cameras. Lieutenant Marks led them. Captain Rodriguez wanted to go, but Marks convinced him to stay. Command responsibility. We watched them disappear into the jungle. Then we waited. The morning dragged. We cleaned weapons, checked equipment, tried to eat breakfast. The eggs tasted like paste, the coffee like dirt. My stomach was twisted in knots. Anderson sat next to me at the mess table. You think they'll find anything? No, I said. Whatever that thing is, it's smart enough to hide. You really think it's smart? Like intelligent? I thought about those eyes. Yeah, I think it's intelligent. And I think it's been there a long time, long enough to know how to avoid people when it wants to. Then why did it show itself last night? That was the question. Why? Why emerge? Why take the mule so deliberately? Why let us see? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe we surprised it. Maybe it was territorial. Or maybe what? Maybe it wanted us to know it was there. Maybe it was sending a message. Anderson stared at me. That's a dark thought. Yeah, it is. The recovery team radioed in at 11 a.m. Their report was brief. They'd found the location where the mules were lost, found the scattered supplies on the bank, found tracks, but the tracks were distorted. Rain had filled them overnight. Hard to photograph, impossible to cast. They were bringing back what equipment they could recover. They returned at 1 p.m. Lieutenant Marks looked tired, frustrated. He dropped a soaked backpack on the ground. That's all we found. One backpack, 3 ration boxes. Everything else is gone. What about the tracks? Captain Rodriguez asked. Washed out. Marks shook his head. We documented what we could, but he shook his head. It won't be enough for command. They'll say it was animal activity. Large caiman, maybe, or a jaguar dragging kills. Jaguars don't hunt in water, Ortega said flatly, and caimans don't surface breathe like that. I know, Mark said, but try explaining that to someone who wasn't there. Over the next 2 days, we stayed at the FOB. Command radioed instructions, complete written statements, detailed timeline, inventory of lost equipment, standard post-incident procedures. They were treating it like a supply loss, not a contact, not an encounter with something unknown. On the third day, a helicopter arrived, not a supply bird, a Black Hawk, unmarked. 2 men climbed out in civilian clothes, but with military bearing. They went straight into Captain Rodriguez's office and stayed there for 3 hours. When they came out, they called us in one at a time. I was last. The room was hot. No fan. The 2 men sat across from me. The older one did the talking. He was maybe 50, gray at the temples, eyes that had seen things. The younger one took notes. Sergeant Fuller. The older man said, I'm Mr. Crane. I work for the Department of Defense, Special Projects Division. I need you to tell me everything you saw. I did. Exactly as I had told it before. The breathing, the emergence, the eyes, the intelligence behind them. Crane listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Did you see any unusual markings on the creature? Any bioluminescence? Any features that seemed artificial or technological? The question surprised me. No, just scales. Natural scales. Why? Just being thorough, Crane said. Did the creature make any sounds other than breathing? Any vocalizations? No, just breathing. And once, underwater, when it moved beneath the mule, the water churned, but no roars or calls. Did it ever come fully onto land? No, it rose up out of the water once, but it stayed in the water. Crane made a note. Have you experienced any unusual symptoms since the encounter? Headaches? Disorientation? Memory gaps? No, just can't sleep. Keep seeing those eyes. He nodded. That's normal. PTSD from an extreme stress event. We can arrange counseling if needed. I don't need counseling, I said. I need to know what that thing was. Crane closed his notebook. We're investigating. That's all I can tell you. Is this the first time something like this has been reported? That's classified. So there have been other incidents. Crane stood. Thank you for your cooperation, Sergeant. Your statement has been recorded. You're free to return to your duties. That's it. You're not going to tell us anything? There's nothing to tell, Crane said. You encountered a large aquatic animal, possibly a species not yet cataloged. It behaved aggressively toward your pack animals. That's the official determination. That's bull, I said. You know it, and I know it. Crane looked at me. His expression didn't change. What I know, Sergeant, is that sometimes the world contains things we don't understand. And sometimes the best thing we can do is acknowledge that and move on. Don't go looking for answers. Don't go back to that stretch of river. Don't talk about this outside official channels. That's not advice. That's an order. He left. The younger man followed. I sat there alone in the hot room, understanding that I'd just been silenced, not officially, not with threats, just with the weight of classified authority. That evening, they flew us back to Makarin Base. Separate flights. Me and Anderson on one bird, Ortega and his team on another. Command was splitting us up, making sure we couldn't coordinate stories or feed each other's memories. At Makarin, they processed us through medical, full physicals, blood tests, psych evaluations. The psych eval was standard. Questions about stress and sleep. I gave standard answers. No nightmares, no anxiety, adjusting fine. Everything they wanted to hear. They cleared me for duty the next day, assigned me to different patrol sectors, far from the Rio Coco, far from that stretch of river. I didn't argue. Anderson got the same treatment. We passed each other in the mess hall 2 days later. Didn't talk, but he gave me a look, the kind of look that says everything without words. We'd seen something, something real, and they buried it. A week later, I heard that Ortega had been reassigned, transferred to another base, different region, no explanation, just orders. Gutierrez, Soto, and Ramirez. I never saw them again, but I heard through the grapevine that all three had put in for early discharge. Medical reasons, psychological reasons. Command approved them all within days. Unusual, unless Command wanted them gone. The official report came down 2 weeks after the incident. I saw it posted on the operations board. Brief, clinical. Patrol Jaguar 6 encountered large aquatic predator, species unknown, in grid sector 4 to 7 along Rio Coco River. 2 pack animals and associated equipment lost. No personnel casualties. Recommend sector be marked as high wildlife activity zone. Future patrols to maintain distance from river in this area. That was it. Nothing about the size, nothing about the intelligence, nothing about the breathing or the radio interference. Just large aquatic predator, species unknown. The sector was marked on the map. Red zone. Avoid if possible. Don't camp within 200 meters of water. Standard precautions. Life went back to normal. Patrols, training, maintenance. The routine of military life. But I couldn't shake it. That feeling of being studied, of being measured and found interesting. 3 months later, I was in the base library, a dusty room with old National Geographics and field guides. I was flipping through a book on Central American wildlife when I found something. A page marked with a coffee stain, an article about indigenous legends. The Mosquito people, native to the Rio Coco Valley, had stories. Old stories passed down for generations about Lasa, a creature that lived in deep rivers, part serpent, part crocodile, part something else. It was said to be intelligent, territorial. It would take animals and sometimes people who ventured too close to its domain. But it wasn't evil, just ancient, a remnant of a time before humans. Most accounts were dismissed as mythology, exaggerated stories to explain drownings or crocodile attacks. But some of the descriptions matched. The size, the behavior, the eyes that glowed in darkness. I photocopied the article, kept it in my footlocker, didn't show anyone, but I read it late at night when I couldn't sleep, when those eyes haunted my thoughts. The question that kept me awake wasn't what it was. That almost didn't matter. The question was why it let us see, why it took the mules in front of us, why it made itself known. Anderson had asked the same thing, and I'd said maybe it was sending a message. But what message? Stay away. I'm here. You're in my territory. Or something else. Something darker. Like it was testing us. Seeing how we'd react. Learning about us the way we'd tried to learn about it. If that was true, then we'd failed the test. We'd run, panicked, reported it, and in response, they'd buried it, marked the map, issued quiet warnings to their personnel, and hoped that staying silent kept everyone safe. But silence has a cost. People die, will continue to die, because they don't know, don't understand, walk into danger thinking humans control this world. We don't. We share it with things older than our species. Things adapted to environments we've barely explored. Things that won't go extinct just because we pretend they don't exist. My tour ended in March 1995, 6 months after the incident. I flew back to the States, processed out at Fort Benning, got my DD 214 and my discharge papers, became a civilian. I tried to forget, built a life, got a job in construction, met a woman, got married, had kids, everything normal. Everything I'd wanted when I was stuck in that jungle staring at something impossible. But I never forgot those eyes, and I never stopped wondering. Years passed. I didn't talk about Honduras, not to my wife, not to friends, not to anyone. It was easier that way, easier to file it under weird stuff that happened in the service and move on. But the nightmares never stopped, always the same. I'm back on that trail, the mud under my boots, the river to my left, and something rising from the water, those eyes meeting mine, that moment of recognition. I'd wake up in cold sweat, my wife asking if I was okay. I'd say yes, just a bad dream. She believed me for years until she didn't. In 2003, I got a call, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Fuller? The voice was familiar. Took me a second to place it. Anderson? Yeah, it's me. We hadn't spoken in 9 years, not since Fort Benning, where we processed out on the same day and shook hands and promised to stay in touch and never did. How'd you find me? I asked. Wasn't easy, but I needed to talk to you about Honduras, about what we saw. My stomach tightened. Why? What happened? I've been researching, Anderson said, digging, looking at reports. And Fuller, we weren't the first. There have been other incidents, lots of them. What kind of incidents? Disappearances, equipment losses, strange tracks, reports filed and buried, going back decades. Not just Honduras, Panama, Colombia, Brazil, all along major river systems. Always the same pattern. Something big in the water, something that takes things, something intelligent. I sat down. How'd you find this? Freedom of Information Act requests. Military buddies who owe me favors. A lot of digging. The pattern's there if you know where to look, but they bury it. Always the same language. Unknown aquatic predator, wildlife activity, inconclusive evidence. Why are you telling me this? Anderson was quiet for a moment because I think they're still covering it up. And I think more people are dying. There was an incident last month, Costa Rica. A research team disappeared. 7 people. They were working on a river study. Found their boat. Found their equipment. Never found them. Maybe they drowned. Maybe. But the boat was intact. Fuller. No damage. Their radios were dead. And on the bank, they found tracks. Big tracks. Three-toed. The same kind we saw. My hands went cold. You think it's the same creature? I think it's the same species. I think there are more of them. And I think they're active. More active than they used to be. Why? Why now? I don't know. Development, maybe. We're pushing deeper into their territory, building dams, changing water levels. Maybe they're responding. Maybe they're defending their range. It made sense. Terrible sense. What do you want me to do about it? Come meet me. I have documents, evidence. I want you to see them. Maybe together we can figure out what to do, how to get someone to listen. I thought about my wife, my kids, my normal life. Anderson, that was a long time ago. We've moved on. Have we? His voice was sharp. Have you really moved on, Fuller? Or do you still see those eyes every time you close your own? He was right. I hadn't moved on. Not really. Just buried it, like they taught us. Where? I asked. Savannah. Next weekend, there's a conservation conference. I'll be presenting some of my research. Carefully worded. Nothing direct. But I want you there. You're a witness. Your testimony matters. My testimony didn't matter in 1994. It matters now. Please. Just come. I went, told my wife it was a work trip, drove 8 hours to Savannah, met Anderson at a hotel bar. He'd aged, gray at the temples, lines around his eyes, but those eyes were still sharp, still haunted. He had a briefcase full of documents, reports, photographs, testimonies, all carefully organized, all pointing to the same conclusion. Something unknown was living in Central and South American river systems, something large, something dangerous, and the military had been documenting it and burying it for 50 years. Look at this, Anderson said, spreading photos across the table. Colombia, 1980. An entire patrol boat crew vanished. Boat found intact. Engines running. No bodies. No signs of struggle. Just this. He pointed to a photo. A track in riverbank mud. 3 toes. Claws. Massive. Peru, 1991. Fishing village. 6 boats disappeared in 1 week. Survivors said something rose from the water. Something huge. Officials blame pirates. But pirates don't leave these. Another photo. More tracks. Bigger ones. Brazil, 1998. Dam construction site. Workers kept reporting something in the water. Something watching them. Management said they were imagining it until 3 workers were pulled off the dam face in front of witnesses, pulled into the reservoir, never found. I stared at the photos. They can't all be the same creature. They're not. They're a species, or maybe multiple related species, apex predators that adapted to river systems. They're rare. They avoid humans. But when humans push into their territory, they respond. Why hasn't anyone caught one, filmed one, proven they exist? Anderson gave me a look. You think they haven't tried? Fuller. There have been expeditions, research teams, military operations. Some never came back. Others came back with nothing. These things are smart. They know how to hide. And when they can't hide, they eliminate the threat. Eliminate? You mean kill? Yes, I mean kill. I finished my drink. So what's the goal here? Expose this? Force the military to admit it? No, the military will never admit it. It's too big, too bizarre. It would undermine public confidence, cause panic. They'll keep burying it. But scientists need to know. Conservationists, people working on river systems need to understand what they're dealing with. And you think they'll believe us? Some will. The ones who've seen weird things themselves. The ones who know there are holes in the data, missing pieces. And once enough people know, it becomes harder to suppress, becomes part of the scientific conversation. He was optimistic. I wasn't, but I agreed to help, to add my testimony to his research, to stand up at that conference and say, in careful academic language, that I've witnessed something in Honduras that didn't match known species. The conference was small, maybe 60 people, biologists, conservationists, a few government officials. Anderson presented his paper, Unexplained Predation Events in Central American River Systems, a pattern analysis. He was careful, never said monster, never said unknown creature, just presented data, disappearances, equipment losses, pattern matches, statistical anomalies. Let the evidence speak. When he finished, the room was quiet. Then questions, skeptical questions. Couldn't this be crocodilian activity? What about drug runners? Isn't this just confirmation bias? Anderson handled them professionally, never claimed more than the data showed, but planted seeds, made people think. Then they called me up. We have a witness. Sergeant Daniel Fuller, retired U.S. Army, will describe his firsthand observation. I stood at the podium, looked at those 60 faces, and told the truth. Simple, factual, no embellishment. What we saw, what happened, what we lost. When I finished, the room was even quieter. Nobody asked questions. They just looked at me, some with belief, some with skepticism, some with something else, recognition, like they'd seen things too, but never had the courage to speak. After the presentation, 3 people approached me privately: a Brazilian biologist, a Panamanian ranger, a British documentary filmmaker. All had stories, similar stories, things they'd seen or heard about, incidents that never made official records. The biologist had been studying river dolphins in the Amazon. One night, his research station was approached by something large. It circled the floating platform for hours, just beneath the surface, never fully emerging. But he saw eyes, glowing faintly, watching. The ranger had investigated a disappearance in Darien Gap, found tracks he couldn't identify, took casts, sent them to wildlife experts. They said, unknown species, possibly reptilian. The case was closed, attributed to jaguar attack, but he knew better. The filmmaker had footage, shaky, unclear, taken from a helicopter flying over a remote Venezuelan river, something large moving beneath the surface, something that couldn't be any known species. He tried to investigate further, was denied permits, told the area was too dangerous. Military activity. We exchanged information, promised to stay in touch, built a small network of people who knew, who'd seen, who believed. Over the next few years, more stories surfaced. Internet made it easier. Forums, private groups, people sharing experiences they'd never reported officially. The pattern grew clearer. These creatures, whatever they were, had a range, primarily Central and South America, primarily in major river systems. They were territorial, aggressive when threatened, but generally avoided human contact unless humans came too close. Then they responded, took animals, took equipment, sometimes took people, always near water, always quick, always leaving minimal evidence. In 2008, a major incident occurred. Ecuador, a petroleum exploration team working on the Napo River. 12 people. They reported something in the water, interfering with their equipment, making their sensors malfunction. Command told them to ignore it, continue work. 3 days later, their base camp was hit. At night, something came out of the river and tore through their camp. 7 people were killed. 5 escaped. The survivors described a creature the size of a truck, moving on 4 legs and 2 legs, covered in scales, eyes that reflected their flashlights. The Ecuadorian government blamed guerrillas, but forensic evidence didn't match human weapons. The wounds were wrong, too large, too deep, made by something with claws and teeth that no human possessed. The military sent a team, heavily armed. They found the camp destroyed, found the bodies, found massive tracks leading back to the river. They set up observation posts, waited for 2 weeks. Nothing. Then one night, something rose from the river. The soldiers opened fire, hundreds of rounds, tracers lighting up the darkness. They hit it, saw impacts, but it didn't go down, just sank back into the water and disappeared. They searched for a body, found blood, lots of it, but no body. Whatever it was, it had survived and escaped. That incident finally got attention, quiet attention, the kind that doesn't make the news. Government scientists were brought in, wildlife experts, military advisors. They investigated, collected samples, built reports. Those reports were classified, but leaks happened, always do. Through those leaks, We learned they confirmed it. Unknown species, reptilian, massive, highly intelligent, possibly endangered, possibly aggressive only when defending territory. Recommendations were made. Designate certain river sections as protected zones, limit development, restrict military activity, not because they cared about the creatures, because they cared about losing more people. Some governments listened, others didn't. Development continued. Dams were built, oil wells drilled, and incidents continued. Smaller now, more careful, but ongoing. Anderson kept researching, kept collecting data. In 2015, he tried to publish a comprehensive paper, major scientific journal. It was rejected. Insufficient evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. The usual academic gatekeeping. He tried other journals. Same result. The evidence was there. The pattern was clear, but without a body, without DNA, without undeniable proof, they wouldn't publish, wouldn't risk their reputation on something so bizarre. He died in 2017, heart attack, 52 years old, too young. His research was packed up by his family, most of it thrown away. They didn't understand what it meant, didn't know why he'd spent so many years chasing shadows. I tried to preserve it, saved what I could. Digital copies, scans, but a lot was lost. Years of work, gone. Now I'm the last one, the last witness from that night in 1994 who's still willing to talk about it. Ortega died in 2012, motorcycle accident. The Honduran soldiers, I don't know, lost contact years ago, maybe alive, maybe not. Either way, they're not talking. So it falls to me to put this on record, to say what happened, what I saw, what I know. In Honduras in 1994, along the Rio Coco River, something rose from the water, something ancient, something intelligent, something that took our animals and our equipment and left us alive to remember, to carry the knowledge, to understand that we are not alone, that we are not the apex predator we think we are. That thing is still there, in that river, in other rivers, moving through dark water, watching from beneath the surface, learning about us as we stumble blindly through territories we don't understand. The military knows, governments know, but they'll never admit it. Too complicated, too bizarre, too likely to cause panic. So they bury it, mark maps, issue quiet warnings to their personnel, and hope that staying silent keeps everyone safe. But silence has a cost. People die. Will continue to die because they don't know, don't understand. Walk into danger thinking humans control this world. We don't. We share it with things older than our species, things adapted to environments we've barely explored, things that won't go extinct just because we pretend they don't exist. This is my testimony, my final statement. I'm 71 years old now. Heart's not what it used to be. Memory's starting to fade. But those eyes are crystal clear, burned into my mind like they were burned there yesterday. I saw something in Honduras, something real, and it saw me, looked right into my soul, and decided I wasn't worth killing. Maybe that was mercy. Maybe that was contempt. I'll never know, but I know it's there. And if you're reading this, if you work on rivers in Central or South America, if you're planning expeditions or research or development, you need to know too. You need to understand that some territories have guardians, old guardians, dangerous guardians, and they don't negotiate. They don't retreat. They just watch and wait. And when you push too far, they respond. Stay away from the deep water. Don't camp on riverbanks. Listen to the locals when they tell you stories, because those stories, they're not myths. They're warnings passed down from people who learned the hard way. The world is stranger than you think, deeper than you imagine, and there are things in the water waiting. That's my truth. Take it or leave it. Believe it or don't. I'm past caring about belief. I just want it said, want it known, want someone, somewhere, to read this and maybe think twice before they wade into a dark river in a jungle far from help. Because if you see those eyes, if you feel that presence, if you hear that breathing in the darkness, it's already too late.